Hello and welcome to a quick video on how to use our CML system to download files and import them into your pods. We're going to start first by logging into competitions.stanley.edu, and I'm also going to turn off my video because it's not necessary for this particular video. But we're going to log into competitions.stanley.edu, and then you're going to do a lab reservation, schedule lab for self. You're going to go to CCNP Encore. All of this is in the email that I sent to the class earlier today or earlier in the class. Go to Cisco CML and then pick a pod. Now I'm going to pick pod 4. There are 5 pods out here. I've got a reservation on pod 5 right now too, but I'm going to pick pod 4. I'm going to give myself a couple hours. You can go up to a maximum of 4 hours. And then now I will wait and let this pod boot up. I'm actually going to go into my old pod that I was using in that reservation because I don't need that reservation anymore, and that'll free it up for another student in class. Which, by the way, if you do finish a lab and you're not using it, it's best if you will go ahead and end your reservation. Pods take about 3 to 5 minutes to boot up, and when they get booted up, you'll be able to go into the pod itself and you will see the CML link. So you can click here on this, and this will load up the Workbench. Now the Workbench is just a Linux box that has Firefox loaded on it. You'll then double click on Firefox. Again, this is part of the email I sent out earlier to the class with documentation. And log into the Workbench using admin and a password of capital T, then lowercase RAIN, train, 1NG $. And that is in the document that I sent you in the email. And that will get you logged into the lab manager. Now here, you could just add your own lab. So you could click Add Lab. You could go in here and you could pull out your own devices. Now, I always suggest if you're going to build your own labs, well, I've found the most stable devices to be the iOS L2 for switches and the iOS V for routers. The Cisco 1000V has some issues. For instance, I can't get it to do inter-VLAN routing for router on a stick. That's a known issue with the 1000V in CML. We also know that if you drag out desktops here, so if you drag out a desktop, we do know the desktops don't currently support IPv6. So the very first lab, when you try to do the lab, you will not be able to put IPv6 addresses on the desktop. Just be aware of that. It's an issue. They will work on the other devices. This is one way you could do it, but what we're going to do is make life a little easier on you, or try to anyway. I'm going to delete this lab that I created. And you actually have access to Netacad from inside of the pod itself. So this particular pod can go out to the internet to get to Netacad. We're going to go to log in. You're going to log into your Netacad account. Be aware that right now you can still use your username, but soon you will have to know what your email address is so that you can log in to Netacad. So that's coming soon. Once you get logged into Netacad, I have downloaded into the CCNP Encore class. I've actually, with the help of Michael Miller, Michael built this particular design for us when he did the first lab, the lab 112. Now, there's a couple things here you need to be aware of. One is there is a document here that tells you the interfaces in use for this particular lab. So I suggest you download this on just your regular PC and print this out so that you'll know what interfaces are in use, because the original lab does not use gig 01. It uses a serial interface and other items, but we're using these interfaces right here. So download this, print it, and then you'll have it with your other lab document. And your other lab document, by the way, is just inside the module. So if you go into modules and you actually go into the class content, so if you're in here and you get into the actual course content itself, and you look under loading here, you will find that your first lab is actually underneath right here, implementing inter-VLAN routing. So you can download this PDF locally. And you'll notice again here, it's showing serial interfaces and all of this. We can't do serial interfaces inside of CML. So we've got a special file built that you're going to use that has all these devices in it, but they're only going to use the interfaces that we have specified. So we'll go back to our modules here. And so what I want to show you is you look down in here, I have put in the file lab112 YAML. This is the YAML file used to build topologies inside of CML. So we'll click here. You want to keep it. You want to download it because this is going to load it locally onto the machine inside of the pod. There it goes. We're going to say save the file. We'll then go back to our workbench. Okay, so we're in CML and we're going to go import lab. Go browse, downloads, and we're going to grab this YAML file and we're going to upload it. You will now see inside of Lab Manager that we have this lab built that has the exact topology for the lab, okay, with our devices. Now these are Linux devices, so we will have to use our Linux skills to be able to put IP addresses and gateways on those. If you don't know how to do that, you can Google it. I also have a link to it in the class. It was broken a while ago, but I'm fixing that. You can Google how to do that. But inside of Lab Manager, you need to boot this lab, so just click Start Lab. Now there's two ways to do this. You can do it right here, or if you wanted to for some reason, you could individually boot each device by just clicking on the green arrow, and that would boot it. But we're just going to boot the whole lab. And then this will boot all the devices in the lab. So they're all booting up right now. You can kind of see, if I zoom in, you can see they're booting right here. You see a little circle saying they're booting. You can also, once you're ready to work on a particular device, the easiest thing to do is to click on the device, if it's a router or a switch, and go to console and open the console, and then you'll actually see the device booting. So you can see this is booting a real iOS version. It's Advanced Services K9 V, so it's a virtualized version, but it's all booting here. The other thing that's really neat, if you ever need to know what is connected as far as interfaces, click on the link between two devices and it will show you what is connected. So you can see here, distribution 1 is connected from 01 to 01. Router 1 is connected to router 2, which I know it says router 3 in the lab, but it says router 2 because we drug it out. But 02 is 02. So this is why you're going to be more nimble in this class. Things aren't going to match exactly what's on the page on our labs. Everything will work, okay, for the most part, but you're going to have to be a little more nimble than you are with our typical CCNA classes, which is why I made that point when you got in this class. This is a little bit different. Here's the switch. You can see this is a K9 image L2 switch. So you can also see here, if you ever need to show IP brief, it does the same thing, shows your interfaces brief, what are here. And so those are available. So this is the process of grabbing that YAML file, importing it into your lab manager, and then you can actually complete the lab. Now, one of the neat things, folks, you've got access to this. So if you want to add a lab and play around with some of the CCNA labs, you could come out here and drag a desktop out here. You could drag out an iOS level 2 switch. You could drag out a couple iOS Vs. You know, you connect them pretty much the same way you do packet tracer, by just clicking on this little connector arrow here and saying, okay, I want to connect, let's connect gig 01 to 01, and I can connect here. So you have the ability to play with these labs. Just be aware that that's something you can do if you want to. You can also build your own topologies if you don't want to use our YAML topologies. But it is available for you as we're trying to build these things out slowly but surely. Hope this has been helpful, and have a great afternoon or day whenever you read this or see this.